Hi everyone, welcome back to Exchange 2019 video series. We completed the installation of Exchange 2019 in our Azure lab on the previous video, part 5. Now in part 6 we are going to do a quick run through of navigating the Exchange Admin Center using the Exchange Management Shell, and obviously looking at IIS of where Exchange has installed and how to import your SSL certificate and assign services. So first things first is we're going to launch Exchange 2019 Exchange Admin Center. Right, you'll notice that it will come up with a warning to say that it's not secure. You just click the more information button and then you log in. Right. It takes a couple of seconds after reboot to actually start the page up. So there we go. So we're going to log in with our administrator account. So while we wait for that, let us launch the Exchange Management Shell. I normally like to run it elevated, so run as administrator. The EAC is launched in the background. We'll get to that because it's still thinking. So when this launches, it obviously goes through a series of commands that it imports, and once it's done that, then you should be presented with, as you can see, a list of commands, and then allows us to start working. Right. Okay, so nothing has been configured on the server since the installation. These are all your tabs where you can configure your different options. Under recipients, you'll have mailboxes, groups, your resource mailboxes, contacts, your shared mailboxes, and if you do migrations from this window, it will then show here as a migration batch. Personally, I don't like using migration batches. I use PowerShell to do the moves, but in your case it might work for you, or might be best for you. If we head over to permissions, you have your admin roles, user roles, and your policies. Now you'll notice that the org management or organization management has quite a few assigned roles. And as you can see that I'm a member of this group. If you wanted to add more people here as members, you could click the plus button, or you could launch Active Directory users and computers. And now you will see that you have a list of security groups in Exchange, and if I expand this, you will see that you have organization management here, and if I click members, that's my account, and here you can click add and you can add more members. Just remember that you've got to wait for Active Directory replication for members added to groups to be able to do things. Right. Compliance management. This is where you can put mailboxes on hold or do an in-discovery search, etc. You can enable auditing. You can run reports. So to do auditing for a user, you got to enable it, so you can actually see reports for that. Right. DLP. DLP is basically if you want to know about sensitive information leaving the organization. For example, you've got a credit card. If it says credit card in the body or something on the mail, then you want somebody to be notified that confidential information has left the organization. Here you can specify your retention policies, your tags, when you want to delete, when you want to archive, etc. And then journal rules is if you want to journal all your mail to another database on your server, or if you want to journal to a third-party ISP that does bottomless archiving. Some of them, to name a few, Mimecast, Symantec, etc., Veritas, they all do archiving or journaling. So everything that's sent and received in the organization gets sent to them. Under organization, this is pretty much where you enable your federation trusts. You can do your add-ins. So if you want to add, for example, Salesforce or Symantec or whatever you want users to use in Outlook, this is where you'll add it. And this is obviously your address lists for your organization, your GAL, global address list. Protection, this is where in the beginning where you specify that you obviously want protection for malware, didn't disable it. Mail flow, this is your rules where you can set up transport rules of if you want certain mails to be blind copied or if you want them to be deleted or etc. Delivery reports, it's pretty much self-explanatory. Accepted domains, right? To be able to send and receive mail from the internet, you need an accepted domain. Now, tesla.local is not accepted on the internet. You need something that's got a public DNS. For example, collaborationpro.com, it's got public DNS, it's got MX records, etc. Email address policies, there's a default one applied. You can go and change them if you have different organizational units that you want people to have different email addresses, for example, finance, or you've partnered with another company and you want different email addresses, then you can create another policy and assign it to that OU. Your receive connectors, right, this is basically your default front end is the main one, and you shouldn't be messing around with this one. You can change the size, but you shouldn't be changing permissions. If you want to have mail come from the internet, or if you want to have printers or any other applications, send mail, etc., you need to create a new send connector, a new receive connector, and then set it to bind to only those IPs so that they can send email. Your send connector, so you need a send connector to be able to send email to the internet. In this case, I don't have one because I don't have an accepted domain yet. Right. If you go to mobile, this is basically if you had quarantine devices in your environment, you'd see them here, and you could also create access rules and then your mobile device policies. Public folders. Public folders in Exchange 2019 is a mailbox. It's not a database anymore. The database stopped when Exchange 2013 came out because public folder mailbox was introduced. This means that that mailbox is highly available, especially when you have a DAG, a database availability group. Instead of having a database like in Exchange 2010, you cannot fail over public folder store to another server. And you obviously will create your public folder mailbox here, and then you'll create your folders and assign permissions. If we go to servers, this is basically where you pretty much will do all your stuff. You need to enter product key because obviously with the trial edition you only have 180 days, and number one on the trial edition, number two you can only have 5 databases mounted at any given time. Under databases, it will always create a default mailbox database for your server. Most companies will go and remove this and will then go and create new ones. If you had to double click on a database, right, it pretty much gives you everything about it, the path, its backup, if there are backups, and if there are copies, it will list the multiple copies. If you went into maintenance, if you wanted to do a restore to this this database specifically, you can need to tick this checkbox here. However, if you don't need to enable it. If you are not planning to doing backups, then advisable to enable circular logging, so your log files truncate continuously. This is where you can set limits on the store level, where you can see the default is 1.9 to 2.3. And then your client settings, you obviously can specify an OAB. Right. If we move over to your database availability groups, this is where you would actually create your groups, and you would add 2 or more servers to the group, maximum of 16. It will then go and install the cluster manager on each of the servers, and then it will add them to the DAG, and then you specify your witness server. So if I had to click the plus button to give an example, you would give it a name, you specify the witness server. So the witness server might be DCR1, the directory will be c:/fsw_dag1, for example. And then you can specify an IP address and click save. Right. This is where the heart of the config comes, is your virtual directories. If you go to any of the virtual directories, let's go to OWA, for example. If you had to double click OWA, you'll notice that it's got an internal URL assigned to it, but no external URL. Now, you cannot access this on the internet. It'll give you a certificate warning because it doesn't know who the root certificate authority is, etc. So best to do your SSL certificate and then change your internal and your external URL. Now that applies to your Autodiscover, ECP, EWS, MAPI, ActiveSync, and OAB. Now Autodiscover you cannot do from here. You cannot go and change your URL from here. You have to do it via PowerShell. And then lastly is your certificates. This is where you would see your SSL certificate. Now if you had to launch IIS, which is this one here, Internet Information Services, and you had to expand this, under the name of the server you've got a server certificate. If you double click it, you can import a PFX file, right? You'll put in the password of the PFX file, it will list underneath here. Once it's listed here and you do a refresh here, it will list the server here. Now as you can see, this default certificate here has got all these services assigned to it. If you prefer working in the GUI, you can then double click that new SSL certificate, go to services, and you can tick the boxes and then click save. But do take note, if you have a wildcard certificate, you will not be able to tick IMAP and POP. It will come up with an error saying that you need to run a PowerShell script to do that, which we'll cover in a later series. From here you can manage pretty much all your servers. So if you had a mixture of Exchange 2010 and 2013, or 2010 and 2016, or 2016 and 2019, you will see them all listed here, and you can view the properties of all the certificates. Right, so clicking this button will show you DAGs, right? If I had to now go to the Exchange Management Shell, and I would type get database availability group, because there's none here, there'll be none here, right? But as you can see, it's a lot easier than to log into a web interface than, or should I say, it's a lot easier to type a command than logging into a web interface. There's just so much more you can do on the actual database availability group in this example, or on your mailbox stores, etc., or if you want to get mailbox. So if I wanted to get mailbox, you'll notice it'll list administrator. Now obviously administrator and discovery, but discovery is not listed under mailboxes, as you can see. Now you're wondering, why am I saying it's easier? So if I go and turn on command logging, right, and I came back to recipients, right, Let's just click a few times to get a few more. So you can see this one, obviously, when I clicked on groups, it went and gave me the PowerShell command that is actually running. The same when I clicked on journal rule, so get journal rule and then get transport config when I was going through the various tabs. It's a great way to learn, to see what it's doing, but it's a lot easier to do it from the Exchange Management Shell. Right, one last thing before we end is if you expand sites, and you'll see you've got your default, which has got your ECP, EWS, MAPI, OAB, etc., and then your backend, which has got similar directories. Now, if you want to change your bindings of a certificate, you would click default website, you would click your bindings, then you would go to your HTTPS, and you would select your SSL certificate here, and then click OK. The same applies on your backend. You click the backend, click bindings, go to port 444, and again you would choose your SSL certificate that you've imported. Once you've made changes here, I find it easier just to reboot the server. If you don't want to reboot the server, then you need to basically launch an elevated command prompt like this, and you would type IIS reset and press enter. Now what that will do is essentially refresh the configuration, and any changes you made now will have been applied. Sometimes this does give you an error and you rerun it, or to rerun, hence me saying I prefer rebooting the server for the changes to take effect. So if you can see there, service has stopped successfully and started again. And there you have it. Anything else that you want to do post installation, your antivirus, any Windows updates, any security fixes for CU3 for Exchange 2019, you can run them from here now, and then you can start building your servers. Now in the follow-up series we will go and build the second server using unattended installation, and then we'll carry on with that, building a DAG, multiple databases, licensing the server, etc. Thank you for watching.